So guys, PCVR is dead. Let's face it, the standalone marketplace has absolutely exploded in the last couple of years, spearheaded by the 20 million plus Quest 2 units sold in this span of time, which in turn has led to the majority of VR developers placing emphasis on the standalone marketplace and, to a much lesser extent, Sony's PSVR 2. And while once the pioneers into the new frontier that was VR gaming way back in 2016, it's no secret that PC VR gaming has stagnated at absolute best and is as dead as a doornail at worst.
But what if I told you that much brighter days were on the horizon?
No, not that horizon. But what if I told you that there are also numerous signs that the tires of PCVR are being kicked at this very moment, and that PCVR could very soon be seeing a huge spike in popularity? Welcome to the simulation inside the simulation. I am Too Damn Gold, your VR Voyager, and today we're going to be discussing the state of PCVR gaming and determining whether or not there is reason for optimism moving forward. So jumping right into things today, it has become abundantly clear to anyone who has spent any amount of time in the PCVR space over the last few years that things have become increasingly stagnant. In fact, spend any amount of time cruising through the various Reddit, Steam, or Facebook comment sections, and you'll see the overwhelming feeling that PCVR gaming has been all but forgotten in the consumer's eyes in favor of developer focus on standalone VR. But what if I told you guys that this increased focus on the standalone market is actually a net positive for the future of not only PC VR gaming, but VR gaming as a whole? Now, what I mean by that is standalone headsets such as the Quest 2 have ushered in millions upon millions of new adopters to the VR space, and quite frankly has essentially kept the proverbial lights on for the industry. This has bought many developers crucial time in their respective development cycles and has allowed for these studios to further hone their VR development abilities, as well as raise some much needed capital to keep the ball rolling. Now, as a result of this, PC VR has taken a much needed backseat to the standalone headsets, as even with the purported retention rate hovering only around 10%, this represents at minimum 2 million frequent purveyors of VR gaming purely via Quest headsets. But how does that help PC VR? Well, stick with me here. If we're assuming that there is a 10% retention rate for headset owners, then I think it's safe to assume that a percentage of these players, let's call it 10 to 20%, will seek to become more engrossed in the medium at the highest level.
Remember, these folks are already into VR gaming, and if there's one thing that gamers always want, well, it's more.
More games, more consoles, more quality. And where do you turn to in VR land when you want the highest quality available?
Legs.
God, Zuck, nobody cares about your fucking legs. PCVR. Undoubtedly a nice slice of those individuals who were first introduced to VR courtesy of a standalone headset will trickle into the PCVR space, bolstering the overall player base. And let's just take a look at the limited statistics available, and you can see that overall PCVR usage on Steam has dropped from 2.19% of the Steam player base in January all the way down to the 1.89% as of the November Steam survey. However, this did represent a 0.66 jump from October, which is of course the first month of availability for the Quest 3. This rise signals to me that the interest in PCVR is there, and the newly released Quest 3, of which already has a 5.2% share of Steam VR connected headsets, or 137,214 PC VR users already taking advantage of the Quest 3's improved hardware and lenses for PC VR gaming.
But I would be remiss if I didn't mention that this number still does represent a 554,000 decrease in players from Steam's all-time VR usage rate high back in May of 2021.
But shifting just a bit from standalone's impact on the industry, I want to talk about PCVR's juggernaut company that seemingly is beginning to show signs of life after an extended hiatus. Of course, we are talking about the creators of arguably VR's best and well-known title, Half-Life Alyx, and well, the entirety of the Half-Life series, Team Fortress, and of course being the overseers of Steam. I'm talking, of course, about Valve, and they have been remarkably quiet in the years post-Alyx and Index, leaving the vast majority of the VR industry thinking that the company has abandoned the platform altogether. However, there have been several indicators as of late that the big boys are gearing up for a massive return, as just this past October, Valve dropped their massive Steam VR 2.0 update, which in their words aims to better unify the Steam ecosystem for all users, providing a more consistent experience across devices, while simultaneously allowing Valve to quote-unquote add new Steam features in the future much faster and more frequently. And while this may seem minuscule in the grand scheme of things when isolated, throw in the mix of a fairly recently certified low-power wireless device from Valve with the designation RCV1V1030, and of course add this to the surprise release of a Steam Link app directly for Quest headsets, which allows those already in the Quest ecosystem to more easily dive into the world of PCVR by providing a direct jump to their Steam libraries in lieu of the clunky AirLink or the paid app Virtual Desktop, streamlining the Quest to PC VR process even further. And this is before we even get to the rumored upcoming Valve developed headset codenamed Project Deckard that, according to several insiders, could not only be Valve's direct answer to Meta's Quest 3 with its purportedly being a standalone headset, but rumors have this potentially being a consoleized PC of some sorts that allows for wireless headset connectivity to a new Valve headset, serving as an absolute game changer in the VR industry. And just over a month ago, in a pair of interviews with Norman Chan of Tested, Valve designer Lauren Shang hinted at some of the overlap between Valve's wildly popular Steam Deck and its future applications in the VR space, before asserting that we don't have anything to announce today in terms of a VR, other than we are still working on VR and we're still pushing forward on it. And according to Valve hardware engineer Yazan Adahayat, there is a lot of technological overlap between the aforementioned Steam Deck and VR potential. Now, take these statements in conjunction with Valve chief Gabe Newell calling the Steam Deck a quote-unquote stepping stone standalone VR hardware, and there begins to be a bit of a shining beacon of hope for the PC VR landscape at large. But of course, nothing has been confirmed on Valve's end, and all this speculation is just that, speculation, and really could just be wishful thinking on our part. Although I will say that there does appear to be quite a bit of seemingly legitimate information from a few insiders who have been right about these types of things in the past, so for now we will just have to wait and see, and instead take a look at the most important question when pondering the future of VR gaming. Where the f are the games? So the most paramount issue that PC VR gamers currently have is quite simply the extreme dearth of new games to play. Seriously, just take a look at the Steam charts or Metacritic ratings and you'll see that all of the highest rated titles, with Vertigo 2 being the rare exception, are all games that were released 3+ years ago. Lone Echo, Robo Recall, The Forest, No Man's Sky, The Walking Dead Saints and Sinners, Phasmophobia, Blade and Sorcery, and Half-Life Alyx are all amazing titles, but again, it has been 3+ years since any of these dropped, and while 2023 provided the critically acclaimed Vertigo 2 and the Rainbow Six Siege cross CSGO inspired breachers, it has been eerily quiet on the PC VR front as a whole. And this again is an issue that is doing more than just leaving gamers craving more high quality titles, but it's actually fracturing and dividing the VR community, as PC VR gamers who see themselves as the maiden voyagers into the VR space feel as if they have been left behind for the newer, sexier standalone ecosystem, leaving PC VR gamers feeling jaded in the process. But of course, with gamers and really any other group of tech-minded individuals, there has been one area of hope for PC VR content, and that of course would be the absolute barrage of high-quality mods, of which have been the lifeblood of the PC VR scene for the last few years now. Whether it's Nomai VR's Outer Wilds mod, Gitski's Portal 2 mod, or any of the wide array of high quality, fully motion controller supported mods provided courtesy of the GOAT VR modder Prey Dog himself, who is of course the man behind VR's most ambitious modding project with the Unreal Engine VR injector, which of course will allow for most Unreal Engine games to be ran in VR, with a large chunk of them offering full motion controller support, a truly remarkable feat that honestly would go a long way towards maintaining and potentially growing the PCVR base.
But anyways, I digress.
The mod community has gone ham in the VR space, and quite frankly, they have done a lot of the heavy lifting that should fall squarely on the shoulders of the developers. Shout out to the Source VR mod team, by the way, for the Half-Life 2 mod being readily available on Steam. But again, the most important thing is that this has kept interest in PCVR gaming constant with the already invested group of gamers. However, mods alone do not a healthy marketplace make, and therein lies the biggest issue. There is no AAA PCVR support at the moment, and it is poisoning the platform as a whole. Just look at two of VR's biggest 2023 releases with Assassin's Creed Nexus and Asgard's Wrath 2. Both of these games are pretty damn good, with Asgard's Wrath 2 definitely being in VR Game of the Year contention. However, exclusively PCVR players won't have the opportunity to play either of these for the foreseeable future, as they are both meta exclusives. This of course isn't to say that things are all doom and gloom, as there is a minority belief that I personally share that while the Quest headsets are the ones keeping the lights on and onboarding new VR gamers, this ultimately will result in PCVR projects becoming more viable.
So I guess to answer the ultimate question that this video presents,
what is the state of PCVR right now?
To me, the answer is PCVR is in a fragile yet cautiously optimistic place, with the next 2 years being absolutely pivotal for the long-term success of PCVR gaming, as this conversationally certainly looks a whole lot different, with a handful of AAA bangers mixed in with a flurry of AA and indie hits. And hopefully Valve has something major up their sleeve. Otherwise, I fear that PCVR gaming could very well be set back for the better part of the next decade, or outright abandoned for the sleeker, newer standalone headsets out there.
But one thing you guys can be rest assured of is I will never abandon you. So if you enjoyed today's video, please do like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help out the channel, and it really does mean the world to me, guys.
I am Too Damn Golden, your VR Voyager, and thanks for joining me in the simulation inside the simulation.